Hello and welcome to Maya with Haste, where we look at features in Maya as quickly as possible to get you up and running. In this video, we're going to take a look at the user interface, specifically the viewport, adding a quick object, a primitive, into the viewport, and then being able to rotate, translate, and scale that object inside of the viewport. So the most important thing to understand about Maya is not to be intimidated by the interface. There's a lot going on here, and actually if you're using the full version of Maya and not Maya LT, there's going to be a lot more options than what's presented here. The first thing to see is the viewport, dead center in front of you. Now you're probably going to have a few of these options off at the moment. I have the ability to see all the different vertices and edges in my scene up here, and then some other information about my scene over here. Don't worry if you don't have that there, we'll talk about that at some other time. If you press the space key, it's going to move you from perspective mode to your foreview, your split. In this case, we have our perspective view in the upper right-hand corner. Next to that is our top, our right, and our front view. Now, in the lower corner of each of those viewports, you have a little gizmo indicating to you the cardinal directions or your basis vectors, your axes in that scene. So you always know what is right for red, up, Y for green, and Z, which is your forward vector, for blue. Remember, RGB equals X, Y, Z in just about everything we do here. If you don't hit the spacebar fast enough, you're going to go straight to this menu. Now this menu is amazing and I recommend you learn how to use it. It basically distills the entire interface right at the center of your screen or wherever your mouse happens to be, and provides you with the ability to access almost every feature of Maya right here. And you can click on each of the cardinal directions to see more of these different menus. I recommend you take some time to explore this, as using it can greatly increase your speed inside of Maya. Now let's create an object. Now there's many ways of creating objects. We're going to take the simplest, and that's by using the shelf. So up here at the shelf, you may start at the General tab, but we want to go over to the Polygons tab. This first set right here are different primitives, that is, objects Maya will generate for us automatically that have a certain kind of shape. So let's click on Sphere as the first one. If you click on it, you should get a sphere dead center in the center of your screen. You may or may not have a window popping up on the right-hand side. That may be called the channel box or the attribute editor. Ignore that for the moment. That'll be covered in a future video. Now that we have this object in our viewport, we probably want to learn how to move around it or see it from different angles. And you're going to have to use your Alt key in Maya for that. The Alt key is everything in Maya, so make sure you always have one hand on your keyboard near that, and of course another hand on your mouse. If you hold down the Alt key and then use the left mouse button, you'll actually tumble around your object or rotating about it. Now if you hold down the Alt key and the right mouse button, you'll actually zoom in and out or dolly in and out of the object. The final one to learn is the middle mouse button. And this is probably one of the most important. This is actually translating perpendicular to your camera, basically moving the camera to the right or to the left direction, or panning around in your scene. Now if you've moved too far away or you've messed everything up and you can't even see your original scene anymore, the F key is your fast and easy way to get back to an object. Now if you have nothing selected and you hit the F key, it frames up on all objects in your scene. So you'll always be able to find things in your scene even if you don't have anything selected and you happen to be looking elsewhere. One quick note though, just in case you do want to find certain objects in your scene and maybe you just can't see them, maybe you've zoomed so far out and they're across such far distances that you can't figure out where to select them. If we go to Windows and then Outliner, this is going to provide you with a complete list of objects in your scene. Here, we have a series of cameras for our perspective, top, front, and side orthographic views. If we click on P-Sphere 1 and hit the F key, it'll frame right up and select that object for us automatically. That's just an easy way for you to get a hierarchy of all your objects in the scene. Now let's learn how we can actually translate, rotate, and scale, as well as select this object. So the hotkeys we're going to use are Q, W, E, and R. And as I do this, you might notice several of these keys over here are becoming highlighted in blue. The Q key is for general select. That is using the left mouse button to select objects, or clicking and holding down and drawing a marquee selection, a box selection around an object to select. If I hit the W key, that jumps down several icons to the Move button. So now that I have Move and I've selected an object, we have this interesting gizmo. These axes represent how we can move our object about. When you first select an object, the central part, this little square, will probably be yellow. Whatever one of these axes or squares happens to be yellow is the axis you're constrained in, meaning right now I have no constraints. I can move this object in any direction. But if I click on one of these axes, you'll notice it turns yellow, meaning I can only move it in that direction. Now, if I click on one of these squares constrain your motion to only those two axes that it's within. So in this case, I can only move in the blue and the red axis, or the X and the Z axis. Remember, RGB equals XYZ, so you'll always know which color corresponds with which axis. Now, this center square actually moves us perpendicular to the camera. That is, we're always moving in a space that is directly based on our camera's viewport. This mode can get you in a lot of trouble because you might not understand that it's moving potentially in multiple axes at once, but at the same time, many times if you move your camera to a very specific direction and then use that, it's very intuitive to move it around into your scene. Now that we have translated our object, if we hit the E key, we get our rotate tools. This changes our gizmo considerably. Now we're left with a series of circles, and these circles represent the different rotational axes our object can rotate about. In addition, you'll have another axis completely around your object, which is hard to see. So if you use the plus key or the minus key on your keyboard, this will adjust the size of your gizmo. Now that I have increased the size, you'll notice we have this other cyan color on the outside of our sphere, and this is once again rotating with respect to our camera's forward vector, or its forward direction. So if we rotate around, you'll notice we keep rotating in a different way each time we move our camera. And then the last feature we have is scale. That's the R key on your keyboard. This allows you to scale an object up uniformly. If you select the center cube, or if you select one of the cubes along these axes, we're actually scaling along that axis. Now, one thing you'll notice is that we're not scaling with respect to the world coordinate system. This is pretty interesting. We have the choice of choosing what coordinate system to modify our object in. So let's see more information about our scale tool by double-clicking this icon. A breakout tool settings box will fill the left side of our screen. And in this, we have some interesting information. Right now, we're just going to look at the axis orientation. The two important ones for right now are object and world. If we select world, this means our coordinate system is respect to the world XYZ. So now that we can see our center, or our pivot, is aligned with the world. Now if we select that back to axis, or object, or local, now we of course have this sort of distorted axis that's more in line with the orientation of our object, or its local coordinate system. This is particularly important when we want to translate an object. So if we create a new object, let's make a square this time by selecting it on our shelf. You'll see here's our object. Right now we're in a line with our world coordinates. However, if we were to use the E key to get the rotate gizmo and then rotate our object slightly and then hit the W key, we'll notice now that our object's gizmos are not aligned with the world transform. Now this is very important because many times it's more intuitive for us to move an object using its local coordinate system, or what it considers to be forward, left, and right, and up and down, and not what the world considers these values to be. Now there's a lot more to the Maya interface than that, but for right now that should give you enough to be able to bring objects into your scene and manipulate them and move them around. And just by doing that, you'll have a lot of power to create very simplistic 3D models. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy this series, and comment below if there's anything in Maya you want me to cover in the future. Thanks. Bye.